Coming up, we've seen drones in Alaska before, but not like this.
This is the Reyes. This is the 800-pound payload.
Coming soon to Alaska, an unmanned aircraft to carry cargo anywhere in the state.
This is a big moment.
Not just for Alaska aviation, but for a remote island in the Bering Sea. How it will help to test this new technology.
I think it'll surprise people when they see what the future looks like in 5 or 10 years.
Ahead, going the distance with unmanned aircraft.
Alaska, where there are old triumphs, but also new frontiers, with challenges as great as the state itself, but a belief that the best is yet to come. Bringing you the faces, the places, and the spirit of the last frontier. This is Frontiers with Rhonda McBride.
Welcome to our program. In this show, we explore the frontiers of unmanned aircraft. Alaska is about to see a new application of drone technology that could be a game changer for the air cargo industry. A California company says it has an airplane it wants to test here that is ready to come out of the realm of fantasy and into the world of reality. Airplanes, pilots, and airport runways. Even before Alaska was a state, they not only carried passengers, but basic supplies. A lifeline for communities, so isolated there are no roads to reach them. From the frozen runways of Macquarie to the docks of Tenakee Springs. That's a big swath of our state still dependent on air cargo. And not much has changed about that in the last 70 to 80 years, except that it costs a lot more.
You know what? Get it sparked up and see if it works.
Ed DeReyes has been to a lot of aviation conventions over the years.
Okay, pull it out that way.
But this small one in Anchorage is the start of something big.
There we go.
DeReyes' company, Sabrewing, is about to do something he says has never been done before in the world of commercial aviation: use heavy-duty drones to deliver air cargo.
Alaska is a state that's really built on air cargo.
And that's why DeReyes wants to test and eventually build his aircraft here. His vision? A remote-controlled plane that doesn't need a runway and can land and take off in just about any kind of weather.
This is a big moment.
And it comes at a good time, when Alaska's air cargo fleet is aging out.
The DC-6s that are bringing cargo into many, many communities around the state, they may not be around forever. There's going to be a transition, so there's probably a lot of change for Alaska in the near future.
The Rhaegal might be part of that change.
All our aircraft are named after dragons. This is 1/11th the scale, but it's a 30-foot wingspan, 28-foot fuselage length, and roughly about 12 feet in height.
The size of a large pickup truck. Why Alaska?
If we can prove ourselves here, if we can certificate the aircraft here, it's virtually a shoo-in for us then to operate in the lower 48.
So for those of us who've never seen anything like this before, tell us a little bit about how this drone works.
We're actually technically an unmanned aerial vehicle, which is different from a drone. They're allowed to go up to 400 feet. We're not even going to be close to that. We'll be flying up at 22,000 feet. Our cruise speed is about 180 knots, or about 200 miles an hour.
DeReyes says the plane uses a mix of sophisticated technologies.
So it's called a quad plane, so it has 4 ducted fans, one on each side of the nose and one on each side of the tail. And the fans provide lift for takeoff and landing, so it takes off and lands like a helicopter. But once it does, then the fans rotate and act almost like jets, and the lift is then provided by the wing when it's in cruise flight.
So how is it powered?
So the fans are powered by electric motors. So we have a turboshaft engine, which is a turbine. It's like a helicopter engine, a turbine helicopter engine, and the turbine turns a shaft, and then we turn generators that then power the electric motors. And the reason we do it that way, it's just like a hybrid, just like a Prius or one of those. Once we get up in the air, we can then throttle back the power and really save a lot of fuel while it's flying. So
in other words, it's sort of self-powered?
Yes, correct. So the turbine, it does burn jet fuel, but it burns a lot less than a standard, you know, like a Cessna or one of those, or like a Cessna Caravan. Very similar size engines, but it burns a lot less fuel.
You know, a lot of people have made the comparison to unmanned cars.
Actually, I think unmanned cars are a little bit harder, to tell you the truth. You don't have a lot of pedestrians in the air, or you shouldn't anyway, or stoplights, or, you know, poles or anything like that get in the way. So unmanned cars are a little bit more difficult, even though there's only, you know, right and left, forward and back. So 2 planes. In the air you have 3 planes, but that also gives you a lot of latitude if you need to miss traffic. Right now, if you need to miss a pole in a car, you can only go left or right, or stop. And in the air, you can go up, down, left, right. You have a lot more options to do so. As long as you can detect them further out, then the solution to being able to miss even birds becomes a little bit easier.
In Alaska, we have some of the most challenging conditions for manned aircraft.
Oh, yeah.
From icing on the wings to storms, drafts that come and swat a plane down.
Right.
How are we going to protect a drone or an unmanned aircraft from all these things that affect the best of pilots?
I am a pilot, and I don't like turbulence. I don't know anybody that does. And so sometimes the turbulence is bad enough to where I wouldn't be able to fly the aircraft. There's nobody on board. You've got a pilot that's sitting at a desk at a remote location, and so the turbulence doesn't affect him. He doesn't see that. The aircraft is the one that's flying through the turbulence, but he's not. That's one example. But even in conditions of heavy ice, the aircraft specifically was made to be able to fly through heavy icing conditions and still provide lift and everything else.
So how does the aircraft handle the heavy icing conditions?
Basically, the entire thing is heated. The entire aircraft is heated, so that's the way we prevent ice from building up on it. We have a few other things that we have patented and patents pending, but that system in itself, it's made to shed ice all the time.
So far, only small-scale models of the Rhaegal have been flown and tested. DeReyes says he can't show us any footage or photos because he has about 18 patents still pending. So it'll be a while before remote airports like this one see the Rhaegal. Like all planes that operate in Alaska, even unmanned aircraft must have FAA certification. Then it'll be up to cargo companies and airlines to decide how much and how fast they want to invest in this new technology. Ed DeReyes says his plane will sell for between $2 to $3 million. His hope to eventually assemble them here in Alaska, possibly Anchorage. But for now, he'll build them at his company in Camarillo, California. In fact, the very first model is under construction right now. Up next, the plane's first customer, not who you'd expect.
To rely on the federal government for the future of your community is putting all your eggs in one basket.
Entrepreneurship on St. Paul Island, how these unmanned cargo planes fit into a tribal government's business plan. Right now, the very first Rhaegal plane is under construction at Sabrewing headquarters in the Los Angeles area. The tribal government of St. Paul Island has agreed to buy that plane as part of a deal the tribe says will bring an equivalent of $43 million in resources to the table, mostly through its agreement to develop and operate a test range for the aircraft on the island. Now, this joint venture was the buzz this week at the Alaska Air Carriers Convention in Anchorage. The FAA says the partnership between Sabrewing and the tribal government makes it one of the more viable projects on the horizon. And for a small volcanic island out in the Bering Sea, it is a big and bold investment. In the past, the community's isolation has worked against it, but that's about to change. Fog and bad weather have been known to delay flights here for weeks at a time. And even when the fog lifts, the St. Paul Island Airport runway is notorious for sudden crosswinds strong enough to send planes that are about to land back to Anchorage. Here at the store,
380.
that means a lot of goods arrive well past their prime. especially produce.
If I'm getting bad product, I can't sell it. So I'm looking for the freshest way and the most economical way.
The store is one of the tribe's money-making ventures.
We know what it's like to lose shipments of milk and fresh resources in a warehouse and acreage because of weather cancellations.
The store was just one of the reasons the tribe began to look to the skies for answers. The tribe began to use drones to monitor the island's birds, which have sharply declined in numbers, as well as its seal population. With threats from climate change, overfishing, and pollution, accurate counts are more important than ever, and drones have helped to provide the data.
This is mostly the females.
In the process of tracking its reindeer, an important part of the local diet, the tribe discovered that drones could be used to herd the animals. The tribe has worked for about 7 years to develop its expertise, a process that led it to Sabrewing, a company that wants to develop autonomous planes to deliver cargo.
They're making history here. We've built something, but they're the ones that are making the history.
Ed DeReyes believes St. Paul Island is the perfect laboratory and the tribe the perfect partner.
They've started with a small drone range, and they realized, hey, there's some potential there, and realized that it's really more in the larger drones is where they want to be.
So what is it specifically about St. Paul Island that makes it a good place to try out this technology?
First of all, it's the remoteness. I've been testing since 1988, certifying aircraft for the FAA, and prior to that, I did that in the Air Force. And I've gone to some very, very remote sites, even as part of the military, but the thing that was different about St. Paul was the fact that St. Paul was very secure for testing. You get off the plane and they know why you're there. It's a small island, but we're not testing over land, we're testing over the ocean. And in talking to the FAA, when we first approached the FAA and said, hey, this is where we want to test, I saw everybody in the room's eyes lit up for the fact that they realized if the airplane comes down for whatever reason, it's not going to hit somebody on the ground, it's not going to hit property, it's not even going to hit land, it's going to hit ocean. So it made it a very viable thing in their mind.
As part of the joint venture, the tribe will operate the test range, which will basically be the entire island and the ocean around it, which would make it one of the largest ranges in North America. Another benefit, jobs for the community. Sabrewing will train locals to conduct the tests, as well as maintain and fly the aircraft. All of these skills can be used in other ventures, so if all goes as planned, the tribe could run its test range as a business.
There are real world scenarios there. So typically in flight tests, we test in environments that are, warm and sunny and beautiful, no wind or anything else. That's great, but this is not the environment where these aircraft will mostly be flying. They'll be flying in any weather, and we see that in St. Paul.
The irony, the wind, and the fog, things that make St. Paul Island a difficult place to live, are now real assets. And remember those crosswinds at the airport? There are a lot of runways in remote communities across Alaska that have the same problem. So with a crosswind, how would this plane handle that?
It would just pull over to the middle of the runway and turn into the wind, so it's facing into the wind. So it adjusts itself. It has sensors inside that know when it's turning.
Where are the sensors?
There's sensors in the wings, there's sensors in the nose, there's sensors in the center. They're all around.
It's almost like it has a mind of its own.
It does. It's got an autopilot on board that is actually 3 autopilots in one. And each autopilot has that sensor on board that tells it you're going this direction, you're going that direction. You've
heard of Murphy's Law. If something can go wrong, it will go wrong. So what can go wrong with these?
We're getting to the end of things that can go wrong. We've been flying military drones for years now, very safely.
For a people with a culture with ancient roots, it could be the dawn of a new era.
I think it'll surprise people when they see what the future looks like in 5 or 10 years. We feel strongly that this technology is going to be utilized in Alaska in the next 5 to 10 years. Our aspirations to start a test range are becoming more real every day.
Not even 500 souls call this tiny island home. Yet, it's a place that sees itself riding the wave of an aviation revolution.
Jobs, opportunity, hope. There's a lot of excitement in the community.
The test range could be in operation as early as this December. Ahead, we talk with one tribal government leader about how it's prepared for this economic leap of faith. We hear a lot about how Alaska, with its geographic challenges and extreme weather, is the perfect laboratory for new technology, everything from windmills that generate electricity to collision avoidance systems on airplanes. St. Paul Island, as a proving ground for unmanned aircraft, might be another case in point. So, if the FAA approves it for commercial use, where would it fly? The hope initially is to fly unmanned cargo planes between places like St. Paul Island and Dutch Harbor on Alaska, a major fishing port in the Bering Sea, and one of those routes in which flights are often canceled by bad weather. Another possibility, a route between Anchorage to King Salmon, a hub for the Bristol Bay salmon fishery. Well, joining us now to talk about the role of tribal government in this project, Amos Philemonoff, the president of the Aleut community of St. Paul Island. So, the Sabrewing Aircraft is in the making, it's in the plant being produced, and you're the first owner of the tribe. That is something that most people would be surprised to hear.
Oh, yeah, it is surprising, isn't it? You know, the technology is pretty brand new, and it's not even really here in Alaska yet, so understandably so, it's very surprising.
So, you know, this is the Rhaegal, the very first one, and we have some information about it just so people can get a sense of its magnitude. You know, it will only carry about 800 pounds of cargo, and of course, you know, a plane would need to carry a lot more than that. But do you foresee it being useful at that size?
I think the Rhaegal is going to prove useful for, you know, things like search and rescue, maritime, you know, Coast Guard rescues, be a great platform for that. Resupply and, you know, people on the front battle lines, you know, wherever our armed forces are, forest fires.
1,000 nautical miles, but that's presuming that it's not fully loaded. It probably, what, goes about 300 with a full load of cargo?
About 360 miles with a full load of cargo.
So the next one that the island will be testing is the Wyvern. And this apparently is about, what, the size of a FedEx truck, I hear. What do you think about that? Is that going to be the one that is the game changer, really?
I think this one's going to be the game changer for all of Alaska, not only Alaska. I think the world. We've got comparable size conventional aircraft running cargo around that have about that capacity. So I think this could be a game changer for, you know, communities that have crosswind issues, visibility issues, and, you know, there's not a whole lot of commerce going on in a community that can't be resupplied.
Well, one of the things that we should talk about is one of the first routes, which will be between St. Paul Island and your neighbor next door, St. George, a 15-minute flight. Are you excited about that?
Yeah, I really am. I'm totally excited because the folks in St. George suffer a cancellation rate like no other in the state of Alaska. I haven't checked that fact, but it's a really high cancellation rate for, you know, airplanes to get in and out of there due to crosswind issues and visibility issues. So this could, you know, be a game changer for communities like St. George. And
of course, they recently had to close their schools, so they've really been struggling, and air cargo regularly coming to the community could make a huge difference for it.
Yeah, it can, you know, open up avenues of commerce, but also there's, you know, other issues like medications getting in, blood tests getting out that, you know, aren't happening at regular intervals now that would definitely raise the quality of life in, you know, communities like St. George.
So this is big stuff. I mean, this is... So how are you preparing for this?
Well, I think we've kind of always been preparing. We got into the 107 drone program back in 2012, been at it for 7 years, and we've always tried to, you know, build capacity in our children through offering math and coding classes, 3D printing, and we're, you know, in earnest going down that road and building up a lot of the science, technology, engineering, and math courses through Bristol Bay campus that we're going to call the Bering Sea campus out in
So in
St.
other words,
Paul.
Bristol Bay is going to help you offer these courses at a college level.
Absolutely.
And they're going to use your school
right
at night, I presume.
Well, we're renting the whole high school wing because the school population has shrunk over the years and there's no longer a need for that excess space at the school in St. Paul. So the tribe is actually renting the whole high school wing, 4 classrooms to, you know, start in earnest down this path of training our folks for these high-tech jobs and giving them the education and background they need to get into them.
Well, you know, kids, you know, have to have something to look forward to decide to stay in a community. And I hear that they are excited about this.
Absolutely. We had an assembly last week when, you know, Sabrewing was out on the island. We went down to the school and just the joy and enthusiasm they showed for, you know, one question was, who here wants to be a pilot? And I bet 3/4 of those kids shot their hands up within a second. It was amazing, you know, and the questions they had for the group presenting, Ed and Oliver, it was one question after another. It was amazing. I mean,
And,
you know,
and
just
kids
to
are
see that
usually kind of, they hold back.
reserved.
But, you know, let's talk about for the community, what does this mean? Because this project goes on for how many years, perhaps?
Perhaps 7 years, and you know, the test range will continue to operate in perpetuity for, you know, others that want to come out and test their platforms. And, you know, it's not limited just to UAVs. We can, you know, do cars and other things that, you know, people are trying to do. So it could be an all-around test range for, you know, even sail drones and whatnot.
The tribe in all of this, are they going to be exporting this technology of testing in an extreme environment?
Absolutely. We're going to be testing these aircraft in an extreme environment, and part of the you know, the agreement with Sabrewing is to provide training for folks that actually buy these aircraft. So, you know, it'll be basically the people of St. Paul showing the world how to use these aircraft and get qualified in them and maintain them. And
so Sabrewing is not going to run flying services. They're going to turn that over to airlines, air cargo companies.
Right. They're more into manufacturing is what, you know, the goal of the company is right now.
So very quickly, what's your best hope for this? What could be the best outcome?
Success.
Of course,
success,
but I mean,
certification.
success is what for the community?
Success and certification means that, you know, we have a viable test range that could operate in perpetuity and create jobs that are, you know, going to be around for years to come, because this is the technology, you know, it's here and now.
All right. Well, we'll have to check in later to see how it goes. Well, when you think about it, maybe it's not so unusual that this new chapter in Alaska aviation takes place on a tiny island. Ever since the first plane showed up in Fairbanks in 1913, rural Alaska has been the proving ground for aviation innovation. So we leave you with a reminder of that in some films from the archives of the University of Alaska Fairbanks. I want to thank you for joining us, and we'll see you next week.